Welcome to another episode of the Total Innovation podcast, where we explore transformative ideas, frameworks, and chat with leaders redefining the way we innovate to deliver impact and create value. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome an expert in reinvention, a thought leader known worldwide as the Reinvention Guru, and someone whose work has helped countless organizations thrive through change. Our guest is the founder of the Reinvention Academy, helping businesses to turn disruption into opportunity and embed reinvention into their organizational DNA for over a decade. She's also the best-selling author of the Chief Reinvention Officer Handbook and Overfished Ocean Strategy, providing practical tools for leaders navigating today's fast-changing world. Not content with all that success, our guest and her co-founders are bringing the Reinvention Summit to Dublin, Ireland in 2025. It's a brand new event designed to unite innovators, change makers, and leaders to deep dive into what it truly means to reinvent in today's complex business landscape. In today's episode, we're going to walk through the concepts of reinvention, what reinvention really means, why it's more important than ever, and the key skills required to master it. We'll also get into the Reinvention Summit, why it was created, and what attendees can expect. And of course, share a little bit more about where you can learn more. And with that, please allow me to welcome the wonderful Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva. It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I hope I got that pronunciation right. Welcome.
It was beautiful, Simon. Thank you for having me.
We did a little bit of practice beforehand, right? So hopefully I did it a little bit of justice. So Nadya, welcome, first of all. And it's taken us a little bit of time to connect. And in that journey, I've got to explore a little bit more of the work that you're doing. And as you told me just before we came on board, you've just had your 10th anniversary for at least part of that journey. But for the audience that maybe don't know you so well, can you just introduce yourself beyond the introduction I gave and explain a bit about your journey to today?
Well, in the professional sphere, I'm a recovering academic. I spent many, many years as a researcher, teacher, a classic academic role in executive education only. And my last position was incredibly luxurious and comfortable. I was the Coca-Cola chaired professor of strategy and sustainability, which essentially means that I got a lot of money to do whatever heck I want to do in terms of research and teach executives only. And I quit. And I quit because I could see that a lot of the glorious and absolutely perfect and necessary frameworks, tools, methodologies, and assumptions beneath those tools were wonderful in the 20th century and were killing companies in the 21st century. And I couldn't get academia to move faster. So I went on to build my own startup, essentially a business school for the disrupted world. And what we're doing at the Reinvention Academy, the first few years were just a pure think tank. We just did research. I had a separate business in consulting, helping companies first survive near-death experiences, and once they do, create conditions in which they never need to hire anyone or they never need to be in danger anymore. It's the perpetual, regular reinvention as the ultimate competitive advantage, as a renewal system that allows you to be super proactive and be ahead of disruption. But on the education side, we were first just doing research. We couldn't understand why companies are dropping like flies around us and why individuals are getting into incredible levels of burnout and so on. And as I'm working right now on a new Forbes article on my take on trends for 2025, the second trend that I put together is the mass scale of sabotage. So sabotage is going, corporate sabotage is going mass scale. Let me just give you one statistic. According to Gallup, we're now at 15% of a workforce that is sabotaging their companies and their bosses. So globally, about 15% of workforce are in a state of what's called loud quitting, which is essentially sabotage. Just to give you a number, if we take as a baseline, about 3.5 billion people worldwide are working. out of them currently 525 million people are in a state of active sabotage.
Active sabotage meaning that they're consciously trying to do something that is harmful to the business.
And they're not stupid.
Yeah.
They're not unethical. They are so fed up that this feels like the ultimate act of justice.
Mm.
And as a person who used to be proud of my life and work in the field of strategy, which is all about longevity and value creation and meaning and purpose, I felt like I have nothing to be proud about unless I approach it somehow differently. So that's where reinvention comes from. It's a new management field. We are being now actively recognized as the new management field. So the last book, when it's debuted as a best book of the year and the best-selling book, it was in the field of management science. And when I see PwC, Accenture, and many others moving into reinvention as their main position, I know we're making the dent in the universe, explaining to the world that just innovation or just strategy or just change is not enough, that we need cohesion between these three relatively conflicting or competing areas in the typical corporate life.
Which is potentially quite a nice framing for that. As I was planning for this conversation today, I threw around some of those questions, right? What is reinvention? Is it just another synonym for innovation, but we've chosen a nice fancy word, or does it mean something a little bit more? I'm reading from the work that you've done, but also from the language you're using here, that it's significantly more, right? Because I think people will talk about continuous need for change, continuous innovation. I guess, the word invention and reinvention is something that is probably a little bit more problematic and challenging for certain people, because it is even more scary than innovation. I think that's equally scary for a lot of people. But maybe talk to me a little bit around this word reinvention, right? What does it mean? You clearly reinvented your career, right? You stepped away from a nice comfy research role, well paid, I'm sure, doing interesting work, and started something that I get the feeling is more than just a job. It's a bit of a life passion, a bit like the work that I'm doing at Wazoku, right? It's a poison chalice in many ways, but you're fighting to change something is profoundly important. So what is this reinvention that you're talking about? Help to frame it for listeners a little bit.
So I will try to simplify it, but forgive me, I'm a nerd, so I make things complex by default. It just comes out complex, and then I need to simplify it. So we have to look at it in a multidimensional area. So I'll mention a few dimensions. First of all, innovation versus reinvention. This is the what part of reinvention. So if you think about the why, the what, and the how, and the side question of when, which is essential to reinvention, this is the what. What exactly do we do? Product, process, standard operating procedure, packaging, branding, business model, whatever you are trying to renew. If you think about it, in the past, the statistics are pretty startling. In the 20th century, the longevity of a typical business model, how long I can milk the same cash cow, was approaching 75 years. That meant I could graduate from college, enter your company, work in your company my whole life, retire, and never see a single significant change, only incremental. That's why quality control, Kaizen, Lean Six Sigma were so popular, because you didn't need big things. You could just drive incremental change, and it was enough. Now, our statistics, I don't have yet 2024 data, 2022 data shows that the median life cycle of a business model was 6, not 75, 6. That means you cannot anymore do incremental only, but it is also not enough to do innovation only. So we got to the point where to deal with the speed of change, two things need to happen. One, it needs to be regular and proactive, not occasional and reactive. You just cannot catch up with that speed. You need to get into a cadence, into a pace, the kind of drumbeat that is unique to your company and to your industry. But second, you need a portfolio that you are dynamically renewing. So in our framework, a portfolio is 9 different types of reinventions. And radical innovation is one of them. Continuous improvement is one of them, but there's 7 others. And
Yeah,
that
I echo very closely with that. I think that we use a similar nine box structure across those different dimensions in what we're talking about, and I do feel like one of the reasonably large shifts across the broad innovation, invention, transformation space is a little bit more of a coming together of common language and common structures, right? This world that has been a little bit too dominated by some of those large consultancies you mentioned starting to mirror some of your language, which is a positive validation for the work and the research that you have done, probably to a degree strikes a little bit of fear in you because they tend to go away and bastardize it a little bit, right? And sort of start to break some of the things that you've been doing. And I feel like there's a real need for more common language and more common understanding around the things that we're doing. How do you feel about the interplay? So you mentioned those two kind of discrete boxes at opposite ends of the explore exploits continuum. How do we feel about the interplay between those, right? And how much they are discrete, distinct things versus a part of the same. You talked about this DNA, right? This sort of reinvention DNA.
Mm-hmm. So first on the fear and what's happening in the field. Good news, all of them moved at the same time. Literally, PwC and Accenture moved exactly same month. So they couldn't claim exclusivity just by accident that they released this positioning exactly the same, which was a serendipity. And I trust the ecosystem always, equals things out. So for me, this is now excitement of creating a common playground. That's what Reinvention Summit is. We're bringing those players from consulting, from corporations, from academia, and most importantly, the practitioners who drive this work forward that are usually slash people, right? They're not fully consultants, they're not fully corporate, they're not fully entrepreneurs, they're comfortable in between slash. Those are people whose LinkedIn profile has a lot of slashes in, consultant slash whatever slash author, speaker, and so on.
Innovator, always.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know each other. We are we smell a particular way, in a good way, that this is that person who doesn't fit the boxes, but is very, very obsessed with the idea of creating progress again and again and making shit happen. I don't know how else to say. That's why when we thought about the Reinvention Summit, our best way to describe it is Davos for doers. I don't know what else to say about that kind of event. So we got just lucky that the ecosystem protected the term so nobody could own it. And I don't want to own it yet. Ever. I want to fan the fire and keep asking uncomfortable questions to not get simplification that is stupidification. I want us to get to nuanced thinking about this. Now, when it comes to embedding reinvention into the DNA, my research is very clear. Your cocktail of more explore versus more exploit, and I'm drawing in my head the 9 3x3, and the explore is more radical innovation, upper quadrant in our model, and exploit is more bottom left, incremental change, and all of that. When I think about the cocktail depends on your timing in the cycle. So when you are approaching already at the stage of a leap on your S-curve, you're jumping to the next growth cycle. You cannot move chairs on the Titanic. You cannot improve standard operating procedures. You cannot do incremental change. So your cocktail should be a heavier mix on more radical, more brave, more fundamental shifts, which are usually business model, which sometimes occasional market, which are often product, and some unique combination. Capital mix can be now in because capital is becoming very innovative space as well. Now, if you go in a stage of a scale up or closer to maturity, then you cannot keep blowing everything up. You need to give your system room to solidify and take complexity and move it into a system. And that's the time for exploit. This is the time where your cocktail, and it's never 0 to 100. It's always some form of a mix in your cocktail, but your cocktail should be heavier on incremental. And that's one of the early diagnostic we do. We measure where you are in a cycle, and then we look at your portfolio. And when the two don't match, it's obvious. You just put two screens, two results right on one screen, and it's obvious. You're at the stage of leap, but you're leaping like that kitten who is tiny and trying to go from table to the counter and falls in the first foot of that jump. That's pretty, you're not leaping. This is not a leap. Let's be very honest. But this, by the same token, and now I'm talking to you guys who are like me, like blowing shit up, do not keep blowing things up. You do need to, move away and give your team, give somebody else who is more administrator type, systems type, operations type, a moment to shine so that they can take all those beautiful things we blew up and built and then make it into a scalable, repeatable system, even if it's just for a year or two, even if it's just for a few weeks, but that work is equally important. And I think what we often lack appreciation for is the other party. People who are on the blow up side of the cycle, so this growth specialists, sales, strategy, stuff like that. We tend to look down at risk managers, operations, logistics, standards, procedures as like they're slowing us down, and the other way around. And this is the time where we have to build respect and a system where we pass the baton.
How do you think about that from a measurements point of view? I ask this question around innovation metrics or reinvention metrics in this case quite a bit. There's a stat on the website for the event, which we will come on to shortly, that says, something like a staggering 47% of top CEOs' time is currently dedicated to reinvention. It's an interesting data point, as you said, coming from Source PwC. So let's add some verification there. That's the time that they're spending, which is actually quite staggering for me, because I'm, in my experience with leadership around the thematic of innovation as a capability, it's the side of desk tasks that they wish they were spending more time on, but they're kind of stuck in the day-to-day of risk management, regulation, compliance, et cetera, right? People related issues and shareholder related issues, et cetera. So first, I think the measurement side of this and how do you make it traceable and trackable is so important. But I think it feels very amorphous to people, right? Something that's quite hard to pin down on. I would argue it's probably the most important thing we can do is to figure out the ways of tracking and measuring it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. It is a difficult one because in my belief, it needs to be custom made. So whenever people ask me, how do I know that I'm reinventing and not just, moving chairs in the Titanic? My answer is very, very simple, as it is extremely complex. Simple does not equal easy. Reinvention as a field of management for me is responsible for only one capital, the level of life in the system. That's all. We do not do anything else. The level of life in the system. So if you were reinventing a product and our product is more alive, we've done the work. If we did everything by the book, used every tool, did beautiful things, and our product is more dead, we did not reinvent. We did something else, but we did not reinvent. Now, that answer makes it a requirement for people to turn on their brain cells and actually invent an index that measures the level of life in their system, because measuring the level of life in my company will be very different than yours, different from my mining client or my construction materials client or my asset management client. Usually it's a combo, and you need to work on creating a weighted index, so weighted very carefully tested weight for the components. But usually it's a combo that one is a finance indicator, but it has to be forward-looking. Unfortunately, too many of us are using backward-looking indicators such as a BDA, for example. A BDA is a summary of your past decisions. Why in the heck do you want to look at that? So then we need to think about a pretty robust cash flow forecast, and preferably 18 to 24 months, or at least 12 months, so you can start looking a little bit forward with a multiple scenarios. So that kind of dynamic budgeting that is rolling every at least month. So every month you can look 18 months ahead, and you are looking at the cash flow, which is an indicator, and you are in real life recalculating the scenarios. That's one line of work. Even if you just stay there and build a robust system, it will save you forever. Good news, that trends that we are moving into that direction with the help of AI. That even in supply chain management, if you look at some of the most interesting data on what's happening in supply chain management, which many would say is not an area of innovation. This is the boring part. Why would you want to quote them? But one of the things is, I was just speaking to that community, and I pulled up some data for them. One of the numbers that really gave me a lot of hope is that once corporations start looking at what's called low touch planning, so this is not traditional budgeting with every line touched by a human being and verified by a committee, and it's a high touch. Low touch is AI augmented. You get 80% of a forecast right for your budget. You're kind of okay. That kind of low touch budget is giving you a lot of exciting stuff around financial indicators, but then you need to look at new ideas moving from ideation to testing to, all other stages of innovation, all the way to capitalization. How far you've gone. And the big companies, and I know your work with Wazoku is very important there, is creating a process where we can see the pipeline from ideation to all the way to we got the cash in the bank because that idea went through the right stages fast enough and so on. I've seen good implementation of that system. I've been part of implementation. They work. You usually need scale for them. You wouldn't do it in a tiny, tiny company. So something around how fast we go from idea to yes or no to money in the bank. You probably need a human capital component as well, and something else. You can look at the customer, and depends on your industry, stuff like that. So that would be my thinking on the metrics, but it does leave you with a complex answer and no quick fixes and no pills to take and no single KPI to implement. That's good news and bad news. Good news, you can never be beaten by competition because you're using a super unique combination of strength. Bad news, you need to use your brain and you need to develop it and implement it and maintain it.
Yeah, I have a thought on that which we can take offline from today and chew over a little bit, because I'd love to get your thoughts on it, and maybe there's something we can do together as well. Let's move slightly into the summit, right? From having left your comfy research world into starting a business, you and a couple of others have decided to create a whole new event, a whole new summit around reinvention. I assume, looking back, you still think that was a good idea. But why don't we talk a little bit about the background, like why do it? Because it's no small bean, right? Trying to create a new event, in this case in Ireland as well, so not quite where you're located. So talk to me a bit about that.
Well, you know how if you really knew what it is to bring up a baby, you would never jump in. But they're just about to turn 21, so now it's an amazing time. But if you really knew how it is, I think none of us would agree to the whole thing. It's the same with any startup, and Reinvention Summit is gloriously, beautifully difficult experience, but it's difficult with a lot of joy, as I'm doing it with amazing partners. One of them, who you know very well, Aidan McCullen, is amazing, amazing thinker, author, and reinventor, as a former professional rugby player who, out of all possible ways, went into transformation strategy and innovation consulting. Great. Try to make that move where most professional sportsmen actually go bankrupt within the first 5 years after retiring. So that's not a small feat by any means. And then we have a partner, experienced brand agency, not exactly marketing or event agency, but close, 9 Yards. And they are crazy about creating unbelievably nuanced experiences. So they're the people who, for one of their clients that were celebrating a particular milestone in whiskey production, got a field on Irish Island and grew barley for a year so that when the guests enter that field and walk through it, the height of the barley is exactly at the touch level of their hands, so they get the full experience that is also tactile. And they literally grew barley for nearly a year just for that 1 minute experience, or whatever is the walk, 2 minute experience for it. Yes. So that's the type of people, and they're big-hearted, amazing people. So how did it all happen? As all crazy things happen, and happen out of the emotion and the idea, this incredible feeling and hunger that there is a way, to bring together people who feel, generally speaking, rather lonely and isolated in their own organizational realities, whether they're corporate change makers and the crazy innovators, and they're shaking the boat all the time and getting beaten for it, or they're consultants, coaches, trainers who have low power in the big systems, but they truly want to help, or senior executives that are going against the grain of the machine, trying to actually make a difference, or academics who are being shunned by their own community, even though they're the best of the best, but their work is not as popularized as their fellow counterparts because they are working for the disrupted time, and the academic machine is still pretending that we live in low volatility environment and still churning research and frameworks that work beautifully in mid 80s and are killing companies today. So that's how it happened. It happened from this idea that there has to be a way for not to separate in our separate corners. So innovation people have a conference, strategy people have a conference, change people have a conference, and where are we talking to each other? And also industry wise, or corner of the worldwide, academia not talking to business, business is not always trusting consulting, consulting competing with each other or beating everyone else up and stuff like that. So that's how it happened. Now, the remarkable things that happened, that the first few months we were just building up our own soup, and then amazing people like yourself started reaching out to us and saying, can I come? And we're like, okay. It's just very sweet to see that there is incredible amount of goodwill and authentic care for this. So we have no clue what will happen, but we know it's going to be something amazing, because the way the design is built is that we're not marketing agency. We're doing it for ourselves to get something out of it at the end. So we have an architecture, we have a weave of the design, and the way it's built, it connects theory to practice immediately. So we don't want a single session to pass if we don't know what to do with it on Monday morning. And because of that, many companies are actually taking teams and turning it into their offsites, where right after they're staying a day or two extra, and they're taking this amazing top level keynote speakers like Seth Godin or Rita McGrath, and taking their insights and saying, okay, what does it mean for our company on Monday morning? What does it mean for us in next few months? Or what does it mean for us in next year? And that's the excitement that I see, that it started happening on its own. We didn't propose it. Somebody else said, I'm doing an offsite. What's your recommendation for, the hotel and so on to bring my team? And we're like, oh, okay, great. So it's a very emerging strategy philosophy, and it's been a labor of love. And I think we're building something we don't truly yet understand because it no longer belongs to us. It's a very communal thing that is happening, and I'm deeply honored for everyone who is playing along.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this or not, but we don't really do third party events. I kind of got tired of the grind of them, and always feeling like as a sponsor you're the one paying the bills, but never really welcome there. And so this was something that we approached with some cynicism, even though, as you're right, I know Aiden pretty well, but we've chosen to make this, just like you said, our thing for next year, and we'll bring clients along. And I like the idea of reinvention, but the thing I subscribe to actually most of all of this conversation is that this is a field of management, right? It isn't a part of management studies. It's not a skill set or a function in a business. It's definitely a field of management, and that's something that I agree with you. Like, a lot of the teachings haven't changed in 30, 40 years, but the world has definitely changed. Not just because it's got more volatile, but it's changed, right? And a lot of the stuff we were teaching when I was at university in business studies, and I did a master's in business, is outdated. I know it's outdated, right? Like, those books have been silently moved to the side, and the next ones have come along, but they're really teaching the same things in many, many ways. As you said, those leaders of industry, their theories have been debunked because their businesses have started to turn the other direction, right? Thinking about the GEs or others of this world that were very prominent case studies, and others at the time that I was studying as well. So congratulations on that. Who's the event for? Like, who would you say? You mentioned the lonely and the isolated, and exec leaders and stuff, but for people listening out there, like, other than who might want to come for a Guinness or a whiskey in Ireland, like, it's obviously a bit of a trip. Who's it for? Why should they come?
Yeah. So we so far seen groups of people in a couple of categories. So of course we have executives coming with their teams. And the interesting thing about those teams, they're not a hierarchical selection. They are spirit or mindset selection. So some of them might be very junior, but these are people who get shit done. And they become kind of in a good way, mercenaries of the future inside their companies, that they are fighting to build and sustain and assure that this company has a future. So the teams are coming in, not just, I'm just bringing my executive team. It's more, I'm bringing people who get it and they want to be equipped with a much better armor and with much better network on how to get this done. So that's corporate type of strategy, innovation, change, lean, design thinking. This is the type. Everyone in that category can be in very different functions. So it's not one function. We are constantly surprised. Some of them are from innovation or strategic function or change function. Some of them are operation supply chain, but they're in a state where all of their management is change management. They don't do anything else just because everything is changing all the time. So that became their daily work. Now, second group of people are some form of internal, external consultants and coaches. And their thing is getting a lot of new insight, toolkit, getting things off the plate, getting things on the plate. And we have a nice community of professional reinvention specialists, people who actually have a title of Chief Reinvention Officer or got much more equipped in the field of reinvention coming. We have some amazing academia. Again, I come back to Rita McGrath. I come back to Clark, who was the dean of Harvard Business School, a few people from academic and thought leaders environment who are coming in to align theory and also offer a better buffet of options. So if you think about the best all-inclusive buffet you've been to, you need that diversity, right? You need fish or meats or veggies or desserts. And the art and what the summit is about is helping us get much more sophisticated plating for each individual situation. So for one situation, you need fish and chips, and for another situation, you just need dessert and fruits. Just make sure you don't take fresh milk and combine it with pickled herring because, diarrhea. But that's what we're getting in corporate environment. We're mixing it methodologies and tools, and then the whole corporation is in diarrhea, and you're like, I don't know what happened. So that's the thing, is can we get a much more transparent buffet of the best thinking in this field, so that, and that is again anticipating change, designing change, implementing change. There's three areas: strategy, innovation, design thinking, and change management implementation. Can we get from all three camps the best, so that we can be much more nuanced in the way we're plating the plates every day? So that would be the main groups that are coming. We do have exploration on reinventing countries, because God knows many of us need it. And Ireland is unique in that sense, because it's a country just 100 years ago on the verge of complete collapse, coming out of agriculture environment, becoming what it is. It's a massive story on its own. It's a case study for all of us.
Yeah.
And there's a next S-curve coming, and there's an exploration of what's next. So for me, Ireland is a land of reinvention. There was no debate for me. I'm from Kazakhstan. I live in the US. Why in the heck? I had to fly to Ireland just for the first time, but I made that decision and incorporated a business in Ireland just because it's a very, very appealing reinvention case that is scalable, that is interesting, at least at the level of a huge city level. You don't even need to go to the country level. So that's why Ireland.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to it. Where can people find out more about the summit and more about the work that you do?
Connect to me on LinkedIn, and for the summit, the reinventionsummit.com is the easiest. You will always get newest updates, read the kind of nerdy background of the summit, but also just see who are the people who are coming. We are honored to see a very diverse group of participants coming in from companies such as Siemens and Accenture and Airbus and so many others, Raiffeisen Bank and so many others. So it's an interesting mix of thinkers. We have in terms of our co-creators, we have keynote listeners coming in from really unique dynamic environments such as South Africa, myself bringing the Central Asian background, South Asian background is coming in as well. We don't want all of it to be talking heads. So yes to keynote listeners, yes to workshops, yes to labs, yes to hackathons. Let's try something in the moment and see what happens.
Bit of reinvention in practice, right? Good. Well, congratulations. Congratulations on 10 years. I think you told me earlier, since you started your business. And here's to the next 10 years of reinvention as well. And I look forward to meeting in person in Dublin next year with many of our customers as well. It's been a great conversation, Nadia. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope that the topic of reinvention has resonated with you, and would definitely recommend you to check out the reinventionsummit.com and also Nadia's work as well on chiefreinventionofficer.com. I believe that's correct. We'll share links. There's also a great handbook up there that you can get download access to. So please do go and do that. Thanks for listening as always. Please subscribe, and I encourage you to share. Go back and listen to some of the past episodes. I'm just coming out of 2024 and looking back at some of the amazing learnings that we've had, and very much looking forward to the learnings that we will continue to share through 2025. So thank you very much, Nadia, and thank you everyone as always. Goodbye.